So how did you meet him, or how did you decide to uh start pro wrestling? I mean, what was this? How did the seed get planted?
Honestly, I've always watched it like growing up. So when I got to Miami for college, I didn't really like the college here. I went to Florida International University. I didn't really like it. So I was just thinking of other things I could do. And my sister pointed out that there was a wrestling school in Hollywood. Um, Back then, Gangrel, the wrestling school called Gangrel's Wrestling Asylum, GWA. And it was only 30 minutes away from me. And I was like, what? You mean to tell me there's a wrestling school right next to me? So I decided, okay, let me try it out. The worst that can happen is I suck. I always say that. I always said that because that's what I said. I was like, the worst that can happen is I suck, you know? Not thinking the worst that can happen is I break a limb or something, you know? It doesn't seem so dangerous until you actually do it. But I tried it. I was learning everything very quickly. I was learning everything very quickly, and then it came time for those ropes. Now, no problem. But back then, it just felt like Mission Impossible.
Well, because the ropes is really a cable.
Yeah, it hurts a lot. Especially back then, I was skinnier too. I honestly had to gain 10 pounds because everything hurt too much, from taking the bumps to like hitting the ropes. I was a lot smaller than this. So that was another reason why everything hurt a lot more. I didn't have like the muscle mass that these grown men have, you know?
Right. And you know what? It's interesting that you bring that up, because I was talking to a wrestler, and he had a nice build, and he was muscular, and we were talking about that, and he goes, "Yeah, but," he goes, "it kind of works as a cushion." I never thought about that. It's like, yeah, I might look good, but it helps when I'm hitting the mat, right? It helps when
Yeah.
I'm hitting the floor or whatever it is. And I never thought about that. That's really a real thing, right?
Yeah, because the leaner you are, the more you feel it. So that's why these big, meaty men, like, they oftentimes they hurt themselves more than their opponent, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah. No, well, yeah, I could imagine you, and because maybe it gives you like a sense of uh I don't know, false sense of security, right? I mean, I'm gonna go all out, and then maybe you just hit something too hard, right?
Yeah, for the most part, for most times, because they don't know how to control their own, like, what is it, body, like, or what is it? They don't have any control, because sometimes you hit something too hard, or you want to hit it harder to make more of an impact, but you have that cushion because you're bigger. So it's like that's what happens. But
Right.
for me, I have to take precaution because I'm not that big. So it's like, if somebody's gonna slam me, I'm not gonna, jump all the way, because I know you can slam me. If I jump even more, I'm gonna just slam myself even harder. And I don't need to do that when I know you can already slam me, if that
Right.
makes sense.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. What were your parents and your sister? Well, your sister kind of told you about the wrestling school. So when your parents found out that this was something you were going to pursue, I mean, because I know what my parents would say. What did your parents say?
For one, my I didn't tell my mom. Like, she didn't know about it until I was like 3, 4 matches in. So that was probably a year and some change after I started.
Wow.
So I wanted to make sure I was serious about this, so like she can see I was serious about it before I told her. So my sister just took her to a wrestling show, and she didn't know like what was going on. And like, it took her forever to realize I was the one in the ring. She was like, because she was waiting for me to come and just be in the crowd with her, but I was in the ring. It was so funny. Like, my mom's reaction was like on video because my sister recorded it.
Right, right. Oh, that. I would have liked to have been a fly on the wall for that one. That would.
At first she was surprised, but then she was just like, "Are you sure you want to do this? Like, you're getting hurt out there." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm sure." Then she was like, "Wow, like you did all of this, and I didn't even know, so you must be serious." And then she asked me the most important question that every Caribbean parent wants to know: Does it make money? I was like, not yet, not yet.
How you got started and how you met Roger.
Yeah, so my family wasn't necessarily predisposed to professional wrestling. So outside of maybe my grandparents and my uncles maybe watching from time to time, I kind of discovered professional wrestling on my own by flipping through the channels and finding Monday Night Raw, once on the USA Network, and I saw Triple H, this figure who was just revered at the time. People were cheering him. He was the champion. He had green lights, all of my favorite things, and just tan and jack. So I thought, man, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do that. That seems cool. So growing up, I went to a bunch of different wrestling schools, Ohio Valley Wrestling, a couple of schools in Georgia, in order to find a place that would be a best fit for me. Lo and behold, I found one which was right in my backyard, which was the Northern Wrestling Federation. And that's where I met Roger at the age of 16. Now, unfortunately, I couldn't train at the age of 16, so I had to wait a couple of years until I became old enough. But I started training with the Northern Wrestling Federation in 2015, and I was there until about 2018. So it was a great experience learning under Roger.
Yeah, talk about the Northern Wrestling Federation and its history, and it goes back quite some time. But just talk a little bit about what they provide and how you think they prepared you.
That's a fantastic question, because the NWF goes back 20, 30 years. I have so much respect for Roger and for all the people that paved the way for that school to remain open still to this day. I mean, I don't think people give Roger enough credit. That's a long time to be running an independent professional wrestling promotion and a school, out of Cincinnati, Ohio. And think of some of the names that came through there. We're talking about Abyss, Jillian Hall, Carl Anderson, Wildcat Chris Harris, and all of these people. It speaks volumes about the NWF, because all of these people have had a hand in my career at some point in time, regardless of whether they were working for the biggest promotion in the earth, WWE, or they were working for an AEW or a TNA or Ring of Honor at the time, and I think that just speaks to their legacy, the NWF's legacy. And ultimately, that's how Roger helped prepare everybody that came through the NWF. It is a professional promotion, one of the most professional you can find. They put on family-friendly content on a weekly basis, and doing that for 30 years it's just unheard of at that level.
Yeah, and if you have no idea what goes into promotion, I worked for an MMA promotion for a couple years, and let me tell you something. Hair pulling.
Yeah, I couldn't do it. I mean, that's MMA, wrestling, boxing. I couldn't do it. I think about it all the time. Being a fan, I want to be, also a wrestler and also in the business too. I get to be able to do both. But the more I think about the business aspect, I'm like, wow, that's a level of work that's just unprecedented with, such little return at times.
Right. What do you think the most important thing that Roger instills in his students? What do you think that is?
I think it's being professional. I think it's a term that's overlooked today. And when I say professional, it's the little things, it's etiquette. Professional wrestling is based off of respect and loyalty, because you have your life in somebody else's hands every time you're out on the other side of that curtain, and you shouldn't take that responsibility lightly. So Roger trains his students to be on time, prompt, professional, well-spoken, well-dressed. It doesn't necessarily mean we're pulling up to the show in a three-piece suit and a limousine, However, there is a level of expectation that you should have when you dress and speak to a promoter. So things of that nature that you learn just in business, that transcend professional wrestling. It's those type of skills that I feel students don't necessarily learn today that will help propel their career if they did, because those are the types of people that promoters want to work with. I mean, being a promoter of an MMA show, could you imagine, your star showing up late, no call, no show, drunk, you know what I mean, high, whatever, you know, reeking, smelling. Nobody wants to be around a smelly person in the locker room. So you spend more time with these guys in the back than you do wrestling them, and might as well be professional and a good person while you're doing it.
Right, right. As a wrestler, how has it made you? How has it helped you grow in your skill as an athlete, you think?
It brings a sense of confidence to your performance, you know, to know that you have all of the other boxes checked, you know, to know that you're there on time, you know your opponent, you're professional, you introduce yourself. It's a part of the networking aspect, right, to help get you other opportunities. But through the curtain, you carry yourself the same way. You know, there are some rules of thumb that Roger teaches in order for performers to be performers and to really accept that character role while going through the curtain, but also remaining humble on the other side of the curtain. You know, professional wrestling is what it is. It's sports entertainment. So we have to learn to be entertaining, and we have to learn to not take ourselves too seriously sometimes, you know, because that's some of the most entertaining aspects of pro wrestling. You know, coming from a fan's perspective, I love to see the wrestler having just as much fun in the ring as I am, you know, booing or cheering them on the outside of the ring.
You know, I talked to you a little bit about the how I got to know the NWF, and I went back through some photo catalogs probably to about 2015. I guess that was about when you started. But looking through the the 7-year catalogs that I had to look through, you know, there's some people in 2015 that are still there now, and there's some people that were there that, you know, I didn't see in the later years. But one thing I did notice was that a lot of these wrestlers, you know, had like these colorful personalities. I mean, and it came out in the pictures. You could see it.
Yes. And that's a great point. I love the airport test, right? The airport test is something where when you walk through an airport, does somebody look at you and think that's somebody? You know, I don't know who that person is, but that's a somebody. When you flip across their photo, does their charisma come out off the page at you and you're like, man, that's somebody I've got to go see? Or wow, you know what I mean? That looks like somebody that's having a lot of fun. That's a part of what Roger teaches, and it's probably the most important aspect in professional wrestling, because we've got to be able to attract the people that might not watch professional wrestling. You know, the moms, the dads with their kids that drag them to the show. We want them to come back as a family. You know what I mean? The professional wrestling fans are going to come back because they're fans of the sport, but we have to be larger than life in order to get the people that are even tougher, which are, you know, maybe a casual fan or somebody off the streets that might not know anything outside of The Rock or John Cena.
Right. Absolutely.
So talk to me. How did you get involved with the NWA, National Wrestling Alliance?
Yeah.
I mean, golly, couple years in the business and here you are, right? I mean, let's talk about that.
Yeah, it was just, it's all about who you know, always, everything is. So when I started training for wrestling, my story I always back to is that I was at work one day, I was listening to Stone Cold Steve Austin's podcast in my ear. He had Ricky Morton on. Ricky was talking about going, you know, he's got a wrestling school. And so I just clicked, like, you just go to school for this thing and learn. So I found a school in Tennessee. It took me a while to get there, but I started the school in Tennessee. And when I started going there, I'd finished the beginner's class, was working my way through intermediates, and the NWA had their resurgence. I was in 2019. So some of our guys, Crimson owned the school. Tom Latimer, who, you know, he's there with Camille. Both of them were involved in this school. Tom was one of my trainers at the time. Jeremiah Plunkett was one of my trainers. And so anyway, these guys that are involved in NWA, they got the ring crew contract. So Tom gets all of us students, Crimson got all of us students to bring in the ring and do all the stuff, set it up for him. So we had heavily become the ring crew. And just, that was when we were going to Atlanta for the tapings and the GPB studios. And, you know, I skipped the very first season. I didn't know what it was going to be. They just said, hey, we're going to go to an NWA show. Here's this, you're going to have to miss work and go do all this other stuff. So I didn't want to miss work and whatnot. So I skipped the first season. I watched it on YouTube, thought it was the best thing I'd ever seen. wanted to be a part of it. So when season 2 came around, I asked permission to go. He put me on the crew, and then it was just every time I just kept coming back. Every time we'd have a taping, I kept coming back. I had a truck, so they need me to run to Home Depot, go buy ladders, go buy tables, whatever it was, go buy the water bottles for the locker room. Do that enough times. Finally, about 5 seasons went by, and I was working on my fitness, trying to be in a good shape. And Billy just took a liking to me. At this point, he knew who I was. He'd seen me plenty of times, and so he gave me an opportunity and put me in a match. So that was, I think, June of 2021, whenever I had my first match.
Right.
Yeah.
And what do you think about the NWA and what it's doing? Because I'll tell you what I mean, I've never been more pleased that the NWA is doing what they're doing. I mean, I just, that was what I grew up with when I was a kid, when I was, started watching wrestling. And of course, the NWA fizzled out, and there was a period where a lot of people didn't even think it still existed. And, and Billy Corgan got a hold of it, and boy, did he ever get a hold of it, man.
The NWA is it's a brotherhood, it's fraternity, and a sisterhood. We got the girls too, but it's changed a lot since 2019 when we started. When we started, it was a bunch of old Impact guys in there. James Storm was in there, Ken Kennedy or Ken Anderson, Eli Drake, LA Knight. Just we had a lot of different people back then than we do now, and so the rosters changed along the way, but it's still kind of the same vibe. Everybody gets along for the most part. You do start seeing now, you get a little more cliquey, you get a little more locker room drama. Not drama, I don't want to say it like that. You get more just, clicks, and certain people don't like certain people. But overall, it's still a good family atmosphere. I do like pretty much everyone I work with, and I'm very well known by everyone in there. Billy, working for him has just been the best. I love where the NWA is going. I love the direction. I appreciate good feedback from you. You'll see a lot of naysayers online. The NWA sucks. They hate what we're doing, whatever, but they don't watch the program. They don't have any input. They just don't like it. It's just kind of where it is. Right. If somebody is invested, they watch the show, they can give us good feedback. What's working, what's not working. I'll listen to it all day long. But like going to the CW now, I don't even know I guess we're going to the CW. We're on the app right now. We'll see how this plays out. And I'm pretty excited about it. It just leads to more opportunities in the future. CW is a really big network. I grew up watching the CW. I watched One Tree Hill and other shows on there. So it's cool to be a part of that now as an adult.
Dawson's Creek.
Yeah, Dawson's Creek. So
I'm not going to tell you when I started watching Dawson's Creek, but it wasn't when you started watching it.
No, I never really watched Dawson's Creek. I saw a couple episodes here and there, but
I caught it on Netflix a couple years ago, and I got up to season 4, and I was like, "What the hell am I doing?"
I'd be actually fulfilling my wish to become a wrestler. It just felt like it was so far, but it was just so close. Everything is right here. Like all these Florida things are right here.
Right. And we were talking about that in the beginning there's, I'm from Texas. So I would say that Texas is pretty much a hotbed for independent wrestling, right? There's a lot
It is, especially for female wrestling. There's a lot of female wrestlers over there.
But there's other places in the country too. Gulf Coast has a lot of wrestling. The Carolinas have a lot of wrestling. You've got the bluegrass region where OVW and Kentucky, and you've got Ohio and West Virginia, a lot of places up there. But Florida, there's a lot of places. What is the pros and cons of that?
Okay, I'll start with the pros. Let's start off with the good. I keep it 100. The pros is if you need the experience or maybe just the payday, there's somewhere to work every weekend. You get to sell merch, different people, different crowds. You get to see different reactions from different cities because it's not just one city. You get to know your passengers in carpools because it's a long ass state. Let me
Right
see
from
what
top to
else.
bottom, right? If you're
Yeah,
going from the
it's like
bottom to the
12
top.
hours. So you get to know your people when you carpool. Let's see what else. It's not a tax state. We have one of the lowest taxes. There we go. That's all the pros. And here are the cons. The cons are, let's see, it's hot as fuck. Some of your matches might be outside. You wrestle sometimes just the same circle of people. Promoters sometimes don't want to pay for your travel. Like I said, Florida's long as fuck. What else is a con? The people might be rude. The traffic is horrible. You go more north, it gets a little racist. Let me see. What else? I think that's it. I covered all the bases.
But the wrestling is
Oh yeah, that's a pro. You get to wrestle. That is the biggest pro of all. You get to wrestle. You get to live out your dream. You get to wrestle.
yeah, let's not forget why we're here, right?
Right. You see, I forgot the biggest pro of all. You get to wrestle.
Hey, you know what? I can get caught up even in what I do in my shoot job, right? I can get distracted by a lot of the negative things that happen with it, and then I was like, whoa, wait a second. This is I'm almost getting paid to play, right? It's that's how much fun my job can be sometimes, right? But you start looking at some of the negative things, and it can happen in any profession, right?
Exactly.
It's like, hello,
There's
wake up.
pros and cons in every profession. It's not just
In everything.
It's not just yeah, because if it was just happy all the time, then it wouldn't be a good time. Like,
Yeah.
there has to be bad days for you to enjoy the good days,
You know what? I had a buddy of mine who used to say, hey, if it wasn't for the bad times, you'd never appreciate the good times.
Exactly. It's like that's why you have to look at it the glass scenario.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah, you get the right attitude.